Well, I'm honoured to have on the phone with me right now a Midlands legend. West Bromwich Albion, Aston Villa, Coventry City. This man played for them all. On the phone with me right now is Cyrille Regis. Good afternoon, Cyrille.
Good afternoon, Danny. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's great to have you on. West Bromwich Albion are doing brilliantly in the league right now, so it's great to be speaking to you. It's been an exciting football season. And Cyrille, you've obviously played at the highest level before. And I want to first of all start off by asking you about your career and actually managing to get to that level. When you arrived to the UK, born in France of course, how did you make your journey from non-league football to the first division of English football?
Well, I wasn't born in France. I was born in French Guiana, South America.
Okay.
Just on top Brazil there. My parents came over here in 1963 and settled in London. I'd done the regular thing, played football in the playground, played football for youth clubs, played football for church teams, played football for the borough, played football on the streets, played football in the playground, everywhere. And I left school at 16, still playing football for a club called Ryder Brent Valley on a Sunday. Played on a Sunday morning in London. And at 16, I got a job as an apprentice electrician, which meant me going to college for 2-3 months out of the year, and then on the building site doing the practical work for 2-3 months. I'd done that at 16, and I'd done that for 3 years. But the second of those years, I was playing football in Regent's Park. I had no trials. I just played football with my friends and my team. I was playing football age of 17 in Regent's Park in London, and a guy comes up to my coach and he says, we quite like 2 or 3 your players. Do you mind them coming down to Moseley Football Club in Surrey,
Okay.
which was an amateur side? I went down there for a trial. I got in there. I turned to be a non-league player, a semi-professional, and they gave me £5 a week to play football.
It doesn't seem like much now, does it?
Oh, it's nothing at all. In fact, my first wage as an electrician was £13, 32.5 pence an hour. So to get another £5 just for playing football was absolutely fantastic. So I was there for a year. I still worked on the building site, still going to college. I went from there to Hayes in Middlesex, right next to Southall and Ealing. I was there for a year, I scored another 25 goals.
Wow, okay.
I was 19 then. I passed my exams as a fully qualified electrician in kind of April 77.
Yeah.
And West Bromwich Albion bought me. They must have heard about me playing for Hayes, and they bought me for £10,000 back in May 77. So that's my short journey into professional football.
And you were spotted actually by the late Ronnie Allen, and obviously you made it in that West Bromwich Albion team and you started off as a youngster. So what are your memories of Ronnie and actually your first few years at West Bromwich Albion?
Well, it was fantastic, very exciting. It was extremely hard work. As you can imagine, I mean, I've never been a professional footballer before. I'm working on the building site, so there's all sorts of doubts. There's all sorts of, you've got to earn the fellow players' respect. You've got to try and get in the side first and foremost. You've got to get used to the different types of training. I was only used to training, twice a week. Now it's every day, so my body wasn't quite up to it. But I've gone from working 8-10 hours a day to maybe an hour and a half a day. So it was different, and it was quite boring at times. Having so much time. Come 12 o'clock in the afternoon, it was finished. But playing football and keeping fit was great. A new set of friends, a new challenge. Ronnie Allen, who was the chief scout, became the manager.
Yep.
There was a couple of injuries, and I think it was August or early
31st
September.
of August, that match against Rotherham.
Yeah,
Yep.
I can remember him right now saying to me, he was the manager, and he said, "Go home, get some rest. You're playing tonight."
Wow.
And I was really scared because I'm 19. I come up from London. I hardly know my teammates. The most I've ever played in front was 500 people, and that night in the cup against Rotherham, there were 17,000 people out there. So it was very, very scary indeed. I can remember getting changed, and there was Laurie Cunningham, Brian Robson, there was John Weil, And those guys I didn't even know, because when I came up, you were in reserve teams. You didn't mix with the first team. And here I am making my debut, and it really scary. It was apprehension, really. It was a kind of fear and excitement rolled into one.
And hey, it wasn't the worst debut, was it?
No, it wasn't the worst debut. I mean, sometimes in life there's a window of opportunity, and looking back on it, I just thought, you know what, let me give you my best shot. I ran out there for the first half. I missed a couple of goals, so we ended up 2-0, and in the second half there was a penalty. Willie Johnson was meant to take the penalty. The crowd started singing, Cyrille, Cyrille, Cyrille. Willie Johnson gave me the penalty. I went up and scored. I scored another goal. We won 4-0, and that was the birth of my career at West Brom.
And was that the match that really cemented your start, obviously, to becoming a Midlands legend, do you reckon? Because 3 days later, you actually made your first start in the league as well.
Yeah, that was a cup game, but 3 days later, people obviously, people think, oh, he's only flash in the pan, or there's a one hit wonder, or one game wonder, that sort of mentality, which you're gonna get. But I made my first team debut in the first division on the Saturday against Middlesbrough, and I scored a goal from the halfway line. I went past 1 or 2 or 3 and I put it in the net. I stayed in the side for about 10, 15 games, and I scored 6, 7 goals, and that was the birth of my career.
And you were amongst a lot of great players in that side. Laurie Cunningham, Derek Statham. Tell us a little bit about the leadership in that dressing room and who really motivated you in that side.
Well, I mean, we had a very good. I mean, in football, it's all about teamwork, and we had some excellent players, not just as great characters, but really dedicated players, very talented players. And I was 19, very green. Derek Statham was only 18. Brian Robson was 20. Laurie Cunningham was 21, 22. And so the older players were like Brendan Batson, who's about 25, 26. And the captain of the side was John Wall, who everybody respected. And Mr. Albion. Mr. Albion is Tony Brown. I've been there for 7 years. He is Mr. Albion. What a wonderful player. And what a pleasure to play with him for 3, 4, 5 years before he went. So they had a good mixture of youth and experience. John Wall was the captain, and they would tell you. Football is quite. It's very honest. If your teammates will tell you if you're not playing well, what to do in no uncertain terms. So you've got to shape up, and you've got to perform, because these guys are winners. And if you're not doing your job, they'll tell you. So, and you tell them, and and through that, you motivate each other to play better.
And those first few years as well, you really did improve. You were the Young Player of the Year in 1978-79, also won Goal of the Season 81-82, and you won the FA Cup with Coventry. What do you consider your greatest moments as a footballer?
I think back in those days, it was quite amateurish, and we were quite... we viewed football from rose-tinted coloured glasses. We hadn't been... we weren't cynical. We wanted to be at Wembley, we wanted to be at Man United, we wanted to play against Liverpool. So it was all about glory. So for me, it was winning the FA Cup for Coventry in '87, which is absolutely fantastic. That is the only trophy I've ever won in my life in 19 years as a professional footballer. So, and many top-class footballers don't win nothing in their career. It's so rare to win a major trophy. But to do it at Coventry, and Coventry has never won a major career in all their career, 104 years of their history, and for Coventry to beat Tottenham in the FA Cup in '87, with me being the only international, ex-international, and Tottenham had about 15 internationals, and we beat them in a magnificent final, which today I don't think gets applauded, but it's a fantastic final. We won 3-2 extra time. It was a really special moment in my career.
You played in the first division also. Obviously, that's something all footballers aspire to do. And you were with the three black players, obviously yourself, Laurie Cunningham, and Brandon Batson, often seen as the 3 degrees, as I've heard.
That's right, yeah.
And that must have been a culture. I mean, what level of racism, or even if it was called banter back then, did you face from other teams' players and supporters, and how did you deal with it?
No, it was racism, but I got to say there was no racism for my players, players that I played with. I played football for 19 years. I've never had a racist incident with any of my players in my team. As a player in 19 years, I've only had it from two other players in opposition, one very early in my career and one very late on in my career. But early in my career, for not opposition fans, can you imagine back in 1977-78, there was no black players playing the top flight.
Yeah.
There was only myself, Laurie Cunningham, Brendan Batson, and there was Viv Anderson at Forest. So you can imagine us three, which was very radical. Three black players in the side, it was radical. So when we went to teams like Millwall and Chelsea and Birmingham, Newcastle, Leeds, the racist abuse we got was extraordinary. It was beyond the pale. I mean, not just one or two people. I'm talking about 5,000 to 10,000 people shouting racist abuse at us. We used to get thrown bananas on the pitch. They call us monkey chants, Quinta Kinte, all sorts of derogatory terms. But the worst I've had it in terms of racist abuse is when I got called up to play for England in 1981.
Okay.
A letter come through the post, and it said, if you put your feet on that Wembley turf, you get one of these for your knees, and a bullet came through the post. So that was a level of racism.
Wow.
That carried on for a lot of years. The authorities didn't do nothing about it. How are we going to throw out, 5,000 to 10,000 people shouting racist abuse?
Of course.
So no one knew quite how to deal with it. No one had to deal with it. So, but we dealt with it, and the way we dealt with it, we made us angry. There's no turning back from that. It made you angry. Here's 10,000 people calling you racist remarks in an arena, trying to put you off your game, but insulting you. It made you angry. So what we did, we internalized that anger, and we used it in motivation. So there's 10,000 people saying, right, I'm going to beat your team. I'm going to work harder for my teammates, put that ball in the back of the net, roll my sleeves up, work harder, go through the pain barrier, win the game, and that'd be my answer. And that's what we all done, not just myself, not just Lloyd Cummer and Brendan Batson, but the whole wave of black players in the late 70s, like Justin Fashanu, Ricky Hill, Richard Blissett, all those guys was coming through, and that's how we had to do it, because the authorities wasn't doing nothing about it. They didn't know what to do, and so we just had to endure and show them by our professionalism, by beating them team, playing well, and destroy these myths, because there was a load of myths those days about black players that stopped us playing football as well. They couldn't handle the cold weather, they were too laid back, they were fancy Dan, and the biggest one was like, they haven't got enough courage, so all these things.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous, but that was the mentality with the coaches and managers, really from the 60s to the 70s. Back in the early 70s, only one or two black guys played. Brendan Batson played one game for Arsenal. Clyde Vest played a number of games for West Ham, absolutely fantastic, and Eddie Coker. But the real flood came in after myself, Laurie Cunningham, and Viv Anderson just broke the barrier and really inspired the second generation. I mean, we didn't realise we were inspiring people, because as a footballer, you're just focusing on beating the team, and that's hard enough because you've got other teammates on your position. But I think what does happen in terms of history was the second generation of black players was looking at us on Match of the Day, saying, playing in the snow, playing in the rain, and subconsciously or consciously thinking, well, it's still really just Lloyd Cunningham, Viv Anderson, Brendan Batson can do it, and their lives and their background is the same as mine. If they can do it, I can do it. So, especially Laurie Cunningham, who's the second generation, just adored him. I don't know whether anybody saw the documentary a week ago.
Oh, no, it was on ITV, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a fantastic documentary, and he inspired, and we inspired the second and third generation of black players to say, well, you know what, if those guys can endure the pain and the hurt and the racist abuse, we can, because we love football and we want to be professional footballers.
And how do you think racism in football is now compared to your playing days? And do you think enough is done about it now? And what more can be done?
Well, it's nothing. It's in real terms, without being derogatory, it's nothing compared to our days. It's absolutely nothing. It's minuscule. But in the same way, when it does rear its ugly head, when there's 1 or 2 people, or 3 people, or 20 people, you've got to stamp down on it. The fact is, I don't think the authorities take it seriously, especially UEFA and FIFA. When you see some of these Eastern Bloc countries, the ultra rights and England or Tottenham or different teams go out there, and the opposition sat racist abuse. The authorities like FIFA fine a football club 20,000 euros or 40,000 euros. It sends a message that, it's not serious. It's not serious. And then we get someone like Nicholas Bentner in the World Cup. He takes off his shirt, shows up putty power on his jockstrap, and he gets an £80,000 fine.
Yeah.
And it just gives the message that, this ain't serious. And that's the problem when someone like Blatter says, when someone calls you racist, abusive, abuses you, just shake hands and forget it. When you have that kind of attitude, it doesn't help, stamping that sort of mentality out the game.
And moving back onto your career, Cyrille, obviously, this racism in football, obviously, it's carried on for a very long time, and they have obviously got to stamp down on it. And I think what we have seen is we are getting a lot more, a lot less tolerant about it. So I think more than anything, it's the fans, would you say, who are encouraging this to be stamped out?
Well, the reality is, racism's been there from the beginning of time. It's just not particularly new to football. Racism, as a young black man in London, you understand racism. You understand racism in the workplace, in the NHS, in the police, in any major institution or any major company. There's racism, so it's not new. It's how the authorities tackle it, or whether they've got the appetite to try and say, this is not unacceptable. And yes, you're right. The crowd can have a say in that. If there's somebody next to them shouting racist abuse, tell them to shut up, or get a stewards, or to throw them at the ground. But sadly, that's not been the case. But I don't think you'll ever get rid of racism. But when it does rear its ugly head, it should step down on it, because intrinsically racism is in somebody's heart, and you can't police that.
Right. Yeah. Of course. So, other than West Bromwich Albion, you also played for other Midlands teams, also, didn't you? Aston Villa, Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah.
What were some of your fondest memories of them?
Aston Villa was great. Coventry was great winning the FA Cup there. Aston Villa was tremendous. I played with some fantastic players there, really, really talented players like Dwight York, Paul McGrath, Hugo Ekihog, Sean Teal, Dean Saunders, and linked up again with a former manager called Ron Atkinson. Ron Atkinson, a very charismatic manager.
Big Ron.
Big Ron. He was excellent to work with. A real motivator. I wouldn't say the great coach in terms of tactician, but in terms of getting the best out of the individual, he was excellent. A real pleasure to work with. I know he made that comment some years ago on Messai Desai.
Mm-hmm.
But, for me, it's a case of, he's remorseful. He said he's sorry. And I think it's a case of he's without sin cast the first stone. So a lot of the black boys who know Big Ron, who knows him intimately, will say, you know what, you made a mistake, mate. You're remorseful. You said you're sorry. We forgive you. But he was great to work with.
And also, you played at under 21 level for England. You also played five appearances for them, I believe. Do you think that other Midland strikers, such as Peter Witt, didn't get a fair chance at playing for the England team? Or do you think there was a bias to players from teams closer to the media centres, such as London? Because obviously you suffered from some of this as well, I suppose.
100%. There is no two ways about it. That there is a bias between the London clubs, the Manchester clubs, and the Liverpool clubs, because the media push players that they know that's going to capture headlines, and most of these players are in fashionable clubs like London clubs, Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester United, Manchester clubs, and the Liverpool clubs. To be fair, the Liverpool players were, kings of Europe. They were a great side in the 70s and 80s. they dominated English football, and a lot of their players were excellent players. So maybe 6 or 7, 8 of them used to be in the England side. But, being an unfashionable club, although Albion were playing in Europe, we were very unfashionable, was not going to get the headlines by the media and pushing players.
Right.
In fact, Brian Robson, who was playing fantastically well for West Brom for a number of years, he never got a cap until he went to Man United in '81. Went to Man United, higher profile, sells newspapers. His performance was just as good as when he was at West Brom, but because he was at Man United, he got his cap and he went on to play 100 games for 100 caps for England. So it just shows you being in the right club and having the right press push. It really pushes your England career. Raheem Sterling, after 3 games, he plays for England. Louis Saha, he plays for England after 3 or 4 games. And there's players like, Nathan Dyer, who's played for 2 years at Swansea, and he's a great player. He doesn't get a sniff.
Still no call up. Yep.
There is definitely a bias, but we work with that. That's how we got to work.
So you obviously had a great career on the pitch, but what are you doing now since obviously retiring? What is your current work?
Well, my current work, I'm a football agent. Mm-hmm. I've been a football agent for about 14, 15 years. I look after my nephew Jason Roberts over at Reading, who's carving himself up as a bit of a media pundit. I enjoy being in the same industry that I love, looking after players, mentoring them, making their contracts, telling the real roots and branch of being a professional footballer, traveling the country, watching football, help motivating lots of stars to feel their potential as a footballer. So, no, it's great fun because I love football, and for me, it's really not like work.
Obviously, so it's doing something that you love.
Absolutely. When you do something you love, it's not like work. It doesn't mean that it's not hard or frustrating or it drives you up the wall, but because you've got that emotional connection with it, a deep emotional connection with it, you keep coming back all the time. It's the same when I was a footballer, it's painful. There's injuries, there's disappointment, there's lack of confidence. There's nothing worse than having lack of confidence in front of 50,000 people. But because you love football, you love your teammates, it's social, it's relational, you keep coming back because, it's your bug and you love it.
And finally, Cyrille, one final question. There's going to be kids sitting at home listening to the show and thinking, because somebody's told them they can't do it. What would you do to that? What would you say to them to tell them that they can make it in the business as a footballer?
Yeah, I would say don't listen. Or one thing I tell my younger players at 15, 16, 17, always turn a negative into a positive. So if someone says to you, you're going to do that, or you can do A, B, or C, you internalize it and you use it motivation. You say, right, I'm going to show you how good I am. I'm going to show you I'm going to pass my exams. I'm going to show you I'm going to be an architect. I'm going to show you I'm going to be a cricketer. I'm going to show you I'm going to be a footballer. So you use that as fuel to motivate yourself to achieve your goals.
Mr. Regis, it's been an honour speaking to you on the Sports Lounge. It's great to have you on. And honestly, I hope everything goes well for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.